Okay. This you can't afford groceries and trying to attribute it to Biden. I've seen a lot of stuff over that. So I think this is going to be another whole segment right here. Why your groceries are still so expensive. This is by Forbes. Let's look up Forbes. It has a slight right lean to it, but is mostly central and high factuality, one high factuality rating, as well as a mixed factuality rating by Media Bias Fact Check. It's owned by the Forbes family, so private family, billionaire owns the Forbes thing. I mean, again, with anything, watch out. But anyway, back to why your groceries are expensive. They're written by Errol Schweizer. All right. Grocery prices are 30% higher than 4 years ago. In the wake of World War II, the grocery industry was born to ensure a cheap, convenient, and abundant food supply. Decades later, the same industry leveraged pandemic-related supply chain crises to raise prices and reap enormous profits, all while selling less food. Sustained higher prices are not only a burden on consumer budgets, but are also an ongoing policy failure by the Biden administration. Okay, real quick. What's your name? Errol Schweizer. Errol, do you want the Biden administration to act on this? Because if you're half the economics person, I think you are, you know damn well what Biden would have to do in order to fix that. And I have a feeling, being as you work for Forbes, you really don't want that. You really don't want Biden and his group of government officials to come down on all of the lovely monopolies that are all oh so supportive of each other. Nah, I don't think you want that. Nah. The U.S. grocery industry is a 1.03 trillion behemoth, according to data shared exclusively with me by NIQ. What is NIQ? Okay. Across all grocery categories in all channels of trade. Prices are up nearly 30% since 2019, while unit volumes are flat. What does this mean? Average shoppers are spending more money and coming home with less food, and Ozempic has nothing to do with it. It never did. What the hell? Okay. Despite the illusion of variety, most grocery categories are dominated by a handful of consumer packaged goods, CPG, companies that own troves of familiar brand names. Soft drinks provided a textbook example of CPG domination. The top three companies, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, and Keurig Dr. Pepper, control around 90% of the soda market. Overall, soda sales are up to 56%, unit volumes are down 2%, and prices are up 59%. In quarter 1, 2023, for example, Coca-Cola prices were up 9%, and PepsiCo prices were up 16%, while unit volumes were down 2%. PepsiCo more recently posted a 21% rise in operating profit to $970 million, with a 6% volume decline after double-digit price increases for 7 consecutive quarters, nearly 2 whole years. As an executive bluntly stated, I still think we're capable of taking whatever pricing we need. Love that. Kraft Heinz dominates the packaged cheese category at 65% market share. Category unit volumes are up just 6%, while prices are up 21%. That is exactly the intention. We are not going to be chasing volume, according to the Kraft Heinz CEO. We're going to be looking to drive profitable volume. In 2022, 2023, yeah, it's totally totally Biden's fault, right? Totally Biden's fault, right, guys? In 2022-2023, Kraft Heinz profits skyrocketed from $225 million to $887 million, an increase of 448%. Gross profits margins reached 34%, up 400 BP over quarter 3 2022. Similarly, chocolate candy sales are up 34%. Unit volumes are down 8%, and prices are up 46%. The top three companies, including Hershey's, Mondelez, and Mars, possess over 80% market share. Hershey's CEO said in 2022, "Pricing will be an important lever for us this year and is expected to drive most of our growth." Hershey saw a 62% increase in profits in 2021. Hershey's 30 brands control at least 46% of the candy category. Boxed cereal dollar sales are up by 17%, unit volumes down by 12%, and prices are up 33%. The top three brands, General Mills, Kellogg's, and Post Holdings, possess over 70% of the market share. "It's been surprising how resilient the consumer really is," stated Kellogg's chief executive Steve Cahillane in 2022 without a hint of irony. See, you're writing all this, but you begin your entire thing with, "It's Biden's fault." Beef demand is highly elastic. As prices go up, volumes go down. According to NIQ, beef unit volumes are down 14%. Prices have gone through the roof, up over 50% in just 4 years. The average beef price per pound is now over $7. So it wasn't Impossible Burger or cultivated lab meat that killed demand. And no wonder, the top 4 meat processors hold around 50% market share. Tyson Foods doubled its profits from 21 to 22, dryly stating in an earnings call, "Our pricing actions, which partially offset the higher input costs, led to higher sales during the quarter." Diaper unit volumes are down 11.7%, while prices are up 38 to over $13 a pack. Procter & Gamble and Kimberly-Clark control over 70% of the domestic diaper industry. P&G prices have stayed high, while lower input costs drove 33% of their profits. The brand predicted an $800 million windfall, and an executive recently mentioned, "We continue to believe that the majority of that growth will be price-driven with a negative volume component." We continue to believe that the majority of that growth will be price-driven. The NIQ data also articulates an important pattern. Further processed commodities show higher price spikes than their base ingredients. Milk unit volumes are down 5.8%, but prices are up 23.8%, while yogurt volumes are down 10% and prices are up over 47%. Yogurt is also heavily concentrated as an industry, with the top 4 companies, Danone, General Mills, Chobani, and Lactalis, possessing over 70% of the market share. Potatoes also illustrate this trend. Fresh potato unit volumes are up just 3%. Okay, a volume went up. Yet prices went up 31%. Potato chip unit volumes down by 3.5%. Prices up over 43%. And most shockingly, especially for lovers of tater tots, frozen potatoes are up over 65% in price, despite what it just said, that potatoes are up in general by 3%. That means the last time they did this, there was less potatoes. Yet now there are more potatoes, and suddenly we're paying how much more? How much more? Price hikes have also taken the form of smaller pack sizes at the same price, a practice known as shrinkflation. A study from the office of Senator Bob Casey found shrinkflation in many categories, such as household paper products up 35%, with 10% shrinkflation, salty snacks up 26% in price, 10% shrinkflation, and cleaning products up 24% with a 7% shrinkflation. Much of this pricing activity can be explained by sellers' inflation. Again, you began this whole damn article with, "It's Biden's fault." And yet here I have, in black and white, plain as day, much of this pricing activity can be explained by sellers' inflation. This is pressure from suppliers to increase prices. How? Professor Isabel Weber explains. That supply shocks allowed corporations to tacitly collude, hike prices, and rake in record profits. This is a form of implicit collusion, she said. Firms do not even need to talk to one another to know what a cost shock is a great time to know that a cost shock is a great time to raise prices. Alex Turnbull, a commodities analyst, echoes this. When you go from 15 to 10 companies, not much changes. When you go from 10 to 6, a lot changes. But when you go from 6 to 4, it's a fix. And the record profits Professor Reber mentions, Groundwork Collaborative recently found that corporate profits accounted for 53% of 2023 inflation. EPI likewise concluded that over 51% of the drastically higher inflationary pressures of 2020 and 2021 were also direct results of profits. The Kansas City Federal Reserve even pegged this around 40%, indicating that sellers' inflation is now a pretty mainstream idea. Sucks to be a consumer, doesn't it? Workers get disproportionately blamed for high prices. Typically, inflation dogma is that consumer demand and labor costs drive inflation. This right here, this is all the people that are like, well, if they pay the workers more an hour, then all the food prices go up. Like Larry Summers would say, blaming business for it is bad economics. These orthodoxies are not supported by the math corporate profits Jesus Christ. These orthodoxies are not supported by the math corporate profits as a share of the national income as a share of the national income are at historic highs. Okay. While workers' share is lower than before the pandemic. And labor shortages get a lot of media attention. Retail labor costs increased as food workers demanded better pay and benefits after getting stressed out, sick, and even dying at work during the pandemic. But even if retail labor costs went up 50% across the board, this would result in price increases of just 5 to 10% at grocery stores, hardly justifying the price hikes in steaks, yogurts, or hash browns. While workers get disproportionately blamed for high prices, Wall Street profit rates are the highest since World War II, and stock buybacks are at record highs. Walmart's Walton family has a combined net worth of $238 billion, increasing by $8.8 billion from 2020 to 2022. The Mars family added $21 billion to their fortune from 2020 to 2021. Food and agriculture billionaires added $400 billion to their wealth from 2020 to 2021, with COVID-19 related food inflation creating over 60 new food billionaires. Sellers' inflation is Robin Hood in reverse. Massive health concentration bankrolled by consumer spending on necessities. Up to 4 out of 5 consumers believe that greedflation is rampant. Consumers are still citing food prices as their number one economic concern. 94% are worried about food prices. Share of income spent on food increased 13% in 2022. 2/3 of consumers are spending significantly more on groceries than last year. U.S. household purchasing power slipped 7% in the first half of 2023. Over 70% of Americans are financially stressed, with 58% living paycheck to paycheck. Food insecurity impacts 27 million Americans, up to 12% over the last year. Meanwhile, high interest rates, rising debt, historically high housing costs, resumption of student loan repayments, and reductions in SNAP benefits are squeezing household budgets. More than 40 million people fell below the poverty line in 2022. The economy is softly landing on the backs of the working poor. Correct. So where is this heading? The USDA thinks prices may come down 0.5% or so in 2024. The two measures of food inflation, or the rate of price increases, the CPI and the PPI, have both come down since January 2023. But the CPI still sits stubbornly higher by 1 to 2% every month. Even in June, when the PPI nearly zeroed out, the CPI remained above 3%. This means that the rate of price increases passed on to consumers continues to exceed price hikes price hike rates received by manufacturers. Sellers' inflation in a nutshell. It doesn't have to be this way. While a growing number of U.S. grocers have been pushing back on price increases, the French government secured lower pricing pledges from 75 food conglomerates that produce over 80% of groceries. The French government has threatened to claw back profits from violators. With the support of the French government, mass market grocer Carrefour dropped several PepsiCo products over price hikes. Tesco resolved the pricing dispute with Kraft Heinz after the CPG giant stopped shipping products to the chain. A week after Mars resolved a similar dispute, Mondelez resolved a spat with Belgium grocer Colruyt after the retailer stopped sales of Oreos. Mars also stopped delivery of 300 brands to German discount chains when the retailers refused to pass price increases on to customers. In Austria, a coder built a simple online tool to track price changes at supermarkets. Maybe the USDA or FTC could put that fellow on retainer. Maybe they could. For Congress and the Biden administration, which have more recently taken a harder look at price inflation, this is a missed opportunity. So what now? Over 80% of voters want lawmakers to crack down on corporate price gouging. Notice it doesn't say we at Forbes or I would like. It says 80% of voters want lawmakers to crack down on corporate price gouging. Washington State is sending checks to low-income consumers funded by price-fixing settlements with poultry and tuna companies. At the federal level, Congress could summon food executives to Capitol Hill and claw back price-inflated earnings. The USDA and FTC could scrutinize the practices that CPG, retail, and wholesale oligopolies employ to elbow out smaller competitors, starting with slotting fees and category captain arrangements. The FTC, which recently published ambitious M&A guidelines, could investigate food price hikes under Section 5 as an invitation to collude. The FTC and DOJ could actually enforce Robinson-Patman to police how bigger chains demand better deals, fill rates, and payment terms at the expense of competitors, or regulators could tweak the Sherman Act and police pricing on behalf of consumers. Congress could universally snap and subsidize the difference that households are spending on groceries now versus in 2019, or for just $80 billion or so, they could make fresh produce free. Such culinary Keynesianism sounds steep, but would still be a lot less expensive than the bipartisan $150 billion increase in federal military spending since 2019. Beyond scolding food executives, there is plenty that Congress and the Biden administration could do to make food affordable. But for the time being, missed opportunities means prices will stay high, millions will struggle to afford to eat, and so cheap food is dead. Rip cheap food. So, we've reached the end of your article. From what I gather, you're blaming Biden for this because Forbes is asking you to direct attention at Biden, at the left in general, because again, you are a right-leaning source of information. I think you've missed the point in your own words, dude. Like, we just read the whole thing. You outlined the problems. You even outlined potential solutions. But I don't think you really want Biden to do those. I don't really think you want Biden to go in and through the bureaucracy to completely destroy what was it, the 60 to 70% of most market share that these companies have on the economy. I don't think Forbes wants that. Nah, Forbes makes way too much money. Way too much money off their billionaire pals for that. Now, does he have a point? Does Errol Schweizer have a point? Yeah. Yeah, he does. 100%. Biden could do this. 100% Biden could do this. But, again, this is being done, this is being written, this is being talked about in an effort to make Harris look bad. Because again, Harris is the VP, so she must be at least partially responsible. No. No, she's not. We've had this discussion.